But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting by a system that threw them overboard 30 years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shit jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want you for retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cockers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all, at all, at all. Yeah, you know? And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue that's being jammed up their ass every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Okay, it is Friday, 7 a.m. or thereabouts, depending on how the engineers put the ads before the show. And it's the 11th of July, and wow, how the time flies. And this is Politics by Jake, and I am Jake, your political commentator, your student historian. And we do political education on this show because I know that you don't know these things, and I'm going to actually start off the show with political education and talk to you about a couple of things that you don't know necessarily. If you do know, call up the station, KCAA in Loma Linda, and say, you know, I just wanted to let you know that I know that smart Alec Jake. He's not the only one who knows anything. I know too. You can do that. That's great. We always appreciate that. Because we want an educated person who is exercising the sacred franchise of the vote. That's what we want. We don't want you doing things like what I did when I was 18 years old and Nelson Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller family was governor of New York, and I elected to put him in, or actually he was already in, but I elected him to serve again. And you know why? He had a wife, and his wife was named Happy. And I thought, this guy is a swell fellow. I mean, anybody who has a wife named Happy, that's my vote right there. And of course, that's completely wrong. That's just totally wrong. And we don't want an uneducated electorate like that. So we do political education, and we talk about fascism. We don't really call it authoritarianism. We don't really call it reactionaryism. Although reactionaries, they're kind of under the same tent with fascists, but they stop short of violence, and they will definitely game the system, but they generally speaking, they don't do violence. So I wanted, and normally I would have spent much more time, going back to the show on the 5th, I would have spent more time on the 4th of July, because this is just I can't express to you enough how important this is. The idea just is so important. I said that, I know, but it's just so important. The idea is this. The 4th of July is the gateway into the modern world. Gettysburg and Vicksburg, they're the gateways. July 3rd and July 4th, 1863, respectively. The United States, this gave birth to the United States, even though the war wasn't over until, April or August, depending on how you figure it, of 1865. It gave birth to a new United States that has become the modern state par excellence. And I wanted to go through this now and make sure that you know this. It is the dominating paradigm, along with the British Parliament and a few other things, but mainly the United States. It's the modern state par excellence, and it is directed and absolutely positively opposed to oligarchy. And concordantly, it is gateway to the new birth of freedom, which the Union soldiery, and I want to say the Confederate soldiery too, the Confederate soldiery by default, they were fighting for the old order. But the Union soldiery suffered and died for, bled for, had physical and mental scars for, probably 400,000 casualties on the Union side. A lot of those, of course, would be sickness and infection, camp fever, as it used to be called. And it gave rise to the Reconstruction Amendments. And the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, that's about slavery, no chattel slavery anymore. The 14th has like 5 different sections. It's like the linchpin between the 13th and the 15th. It's just incredibly important. You regular listeners to the show will have heard me, talk about this before. And the 15th was with regard to voting. And that's your new birth of freedom right there. And I want to talk about the things that are antithetical to that. And one of the things that I want to talk about is I want to talk about fascism. I want to talk about democracy or democratic republicanism, just whatever you want. We have a hybrid form of government. I think it was Polybius, and he's a Roman guy. Don't worry about it. Just worry about what he said. Polybius says that if you have a single form of government, it's always going to fail. You need a hybrid form. And that's what we've got. We have got a democratic republic. We've got a government that has the forms of a republic, and it also has the freedoms of a democracy. And some people will say, oh, it's a republic. No, it's a democratic republic. And then people will say, oh, it's a democracy. No, it's not. It's a democratic republic. It's a hybrid. So I want to, and I said that I would talk about in a couple of previous shows to this, because there's so much, just an hour is not enough, and we're negotiating with the various stations to see if we can get more time, and that's ongoing, and I'll be sure to let you know on that as soon as that happens. But I can't get to it all, but one of the things that I told you I wanted to talk to you about was I wanted to talk to you about the state of the Democratic Party. I also want to talk about fascism. Let me talk just a little bit about fascism first, and then we'll get into the Democratic Party a little bit. Stalin said the main enemy is the social democrat, and therefore you've got to fight them. And that's the theory right there of social fascism. That's social fascism. And this is the heritage of a certain kind of Democrat, the ultra-left Democrat in the 20th century. It's a form of counterinsurgency. We've talked at different times about the Philadelphia Plan, and this was Nixon. And I know you don't attribute this kind of deviousness and this kind of purposed malevolence to somebody like Nixon, but it's a thing, I'm sorry. So you have the Philadelphia Plan. And the Philadelphia Plan is Nixon and Secretary of Labor George Shultz. They're getting together to play the building trades, the unions, the hard hats against the black unemployed. So this is one part of the New Deal, and I'm getting into the New Deal, and we're going to talk about what the New Deal is, but let's just start with this first. So this was trying to split the New Deal coalition because it was so successful. It's the most successful form of economic government ever seen. I mean, it really is. So they're trying, this is the one thing about these guys that you need to understand. They hate the New Deal. They hate the New Deal because they're the representatives of people like finance oligarchs. And what George Carlin referred to in the clip that you just heard that started the show that I also play periodically as the financial criminals who run Wall Street. And it is really kind of criminal what they're doing. And they have people who, the market often operates on the greater fool theory, to get the big suckers in there and then clean them out and then take your profits. So they're forever trying to figure out what to do to break up the New Deal. So they did that. And they played one part of the New Deal. And I haven't even said to you what it is yet, but I'm gonna, because I wanted for a while to talk about the coalition that made up the New Deal, and I don't think you've ever heard me say just exactly what it was. You just heard me say New Deal, New Deal, New Deal. So I'm going to tell you about that. So they wanted to play one part of the New Deal against the other, split the New Deal coalition, and that's counterinsurgency. That's a wedge issue. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. And here we go. I'm going to tell you what the coalition was. The FDR coalition, it was cities, it was labor, it was, definitely democratic political machines. The South was still in play. Not anymore, but for various reasons then, because remember, and I know, like I say, this is history. I'm going back a ways. You don't necessarily know this. Take it from me. The South was still possible. And this is why. You have farmers, you have soldiers, you have black Americans, and they found that they could do better with the WPA, the PWA, and related things, right? These are the sort of Harry Hopkins world of work for government-sponsored jobs. And people today don't realize, but it is these work projects which have built virtually all of the public buildings in the Midwest. And so many places still there, the libraries, the city councils, and all this. And this was a winning combination. So it was the FDR coalition dominated the United States. It dominated the United States. And this, for those of you who are unaware, and that's okay, that's why you listen to PB&J, cheap plug. It also had wonderful merit. The New Deal in America under FDR is the first time in world history that we know of that the middle class becomes the numerical majority of the entire society. And that lasted from sometime in the 1930s, late 30s maybe, or maybe early 40s, but it lasted from then until, and the best figure I have is 2015. Foundation research showed that the American middle class ceased to be the majority of society around December 2015. You didn't know that, but it's true. And it has not gotten any better since then. And you have this other kind of Democrat, which is an ultra-left Democrat, Mamdani of the Democratic candidate for mayor of New York. He's one of them. I could talk about him. I don't know, maybe I'll talk about him. The disappointment is that the ultra-left is a sectarian. He can't, or she, can't compromise on the color groups are like this. They exist independent of each other. They can't get together, form any kind of a coalition. They're just, one-trick ponies. They're just doing what they do, and that's it. And therefore, what you got then is a crippling additional larding or overlay of ideology on top of something that might be viable, and it's too bad. It's really too bad, and this is a can of worms that the Democratic Party does not need. They don't seem to be able to find their way out of it. It's splitting, it's dividing. We've always said the ultra-lefts are often perpetrators, whether they know it or not, of fratricide. Sometimes I've heard them called the fratricide caucus because their business model is to attack incumbent Democrats. And we had Hogg, for example, who wanted to institutionalize that. He said, let's have a situation where the Democratic Party, through or a member of the Deputy National Secretary himself, was going to promote primary challenges, to Democrats in safe seats because they were too stodgy or something. They were not radical enough. And unfortunately, it looks like that has been ended, but a lot of bad blood, a lot of energy lost in the Democratic National Committee when you should have been focusing on doing things to begin to slow down Trump and prepare for his loss of power. But that's not what happened. So the ultra-left business model, it has to be rejected. The political party has to be there to win elections. It's not to somehow represent every striation of opinion or radicalism or whatever it is, because as a methodology for winning elections, it just doesn't work. So we have to get back, honestly, you have to get back to the New Deal way of doing things. Mass traction, economic demands that benefit everyone. And then, when we're in power, we can worry about the rest of this stuff. If everyone is being economically benefited, they're all going to be happier anyway. And I think that's the opening segment of the show. And now we'll take a break, hear from our good friends at Twain Consulting, and this is Politics by Jay. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now, we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together. Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. How are you doing? And as usual, there's a lot going on. Trump and his cabal, and someone was talking about this the other day. I can't remember, but I saw it. I think it was Alessandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, I don't know, I think she's flipping back and forth between being a democratic socialist and being a Democrat. I wish she would change to Democrat. She would stand a better chance on a national stage because, as I've explained to you, because we have, honestly, politically backwards people. And, as I said in the previous segment before, and I will own up to this. I will plead guilty to this. When I was 18 years old, I voted for Governor Rockefeller because his wife's name was Happy. That's the reason why I voted for him. In 1972, I voted for Richard Nixon because he said "sock it to me" on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. So I don't excuse myself here. I understand that people are in this society more than ever now. Since 2015, as I reported, the middle class has ceased to be a force in American society since about 2016 or 2015, according to the Foundation study that I cited in the last segment. But I understand that we are all busy. We are all enjoying the freedoms that we have right now, that the American system has given us. And increasingly, we are all oppressed economically. Remember what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, a necessitous man is not a free man. This was embodied in the New Deal. It was embodied in the Second Economic Bill of Rights. It was the fundamental premise of the Second Economic Bill of Rights. And it was even in the North Atlantic Charter, which I didn't really know, but that's amazing. So this is an incredibly important concept. If you're necessitous, you're not free. And I know that a lot of you who are listening, I understand you're struggling increasingly to keep your nostrils above the economic waterline. I get it. You don't have the opportunity to delve into this stuff the way I have. I appreciate you listening. That shows. Just listening to Politics by Jake shows that you're politically active, and I appreciate it. Welcome all you. Welcome the maggots, for that matter, because the maggots, I believe in deathbed repentance. I believe that even the maggots, I'm sorry, even the maggots can repent of their political inanity and stupidity and naivete, which I am a fellow sinner. I plead guilty to. I was like you at one time. And so just to reduce that to the final comment, thank you for watching and listening to the show. We've got a bunch of things. I've got like 14 things that I wanted to cover. There's just no way on two shows a week. Well, no way on one show that I'm going to be able to get into them. Certainly going to try. But one of the things that you have heard me talk about periodically, and it's important, was President Biden, when he was the president, he had a plan. He wanted to address the deficit. So let's just briefly for a minute, okay? Let's turn our attention to the mounting economic challenges facing the United States. These are challenges that carry profound implications, not just for our country, but for the entire global financial system. Our national debt has soared to an unprecedented 37 trillion. 37 trillion. That's dollars. To put that in perspective, this level of indebtedness poses serious risks of financial instability, potential collapse, if not managed carefully. And it's not being managed carefully. The federal government under Trump is spending like a drunken sailor. And I will say this. And I will say this, you have to give credit where credit is due. Even though these guys are fascists, even though these guys purposely have tried to overthrow the government, and it's not just Trump, they follow through. The people elected him. Elon Musk, for example, paid $277 million. I believe that's the figure. If somebody wanted to call in the station and say, no, it's not, it's $276 million, that's fine. I'm all right with that. Call into the station, KCAA in Loma Linda, California, and say, no, Jake was wrong. You need to fire him. Anyway, I believe it was $277 million, a lot of money, in order to get him elected. And for that, Trump performed. For the various other industries that paid hundreds of millions, and that's unfortunately that's what it takes, hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars, Trump has performed. And the other Republican presidents tend to be this same way. The Democrats, as I've explained before in the last segment, I talked about the ultra-lefts, for example, and there are ultras on the right. There's the alt-right column. They perform, but they're kind of captured. And again, I talked about this in the last segment. They've gone away from the New Deal roots. And this is just really important to say again. They've gone away from the New Deal roots and they've gone corporate. And that's Clinton. That's the Clintonistas. Clinton got his presidency in great extent because he wanted to go ahead and play ball with the corporatists. That's why they're called guerrilla Democrats. That's why they're called Clintonistas, because they went against the New Deal concept that had worked so well and had brought so much prosperity to America. And now the remaining Democrats, and there are a lot of them, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not one of them. She has other problems. She's kind of half in and half out of the squad, in my opinion. And they are stuck, and the corporatists don't really want the Democrats to win. But they're playing both sides of the fence, and they're controlling the Democrats, and the Democrats want more than anything to get elected. As we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, I went to the secret meetings, and I heard the representatives say, my donors, my donors, my donors, instead of my constituents, my constituents, my constituents. That's who's paying them, and they want to get elected more than anything else. That's who's paying them, and that is whose tune they dance to. So enough of that. Our national debt, in the meantime, soared to unprecedented $37 trillion. One of the key issues tied to this debt crisis is the Federal Reserve's and the Treasury's ongoing struggle to finance government operations. Recent Treasury bond auctions have faced unexpected challenges, signaling that investors may be growing wary. And this is the thing. I look at what's going on in Congress, and I look at the Republicans doing what they're doing, and it's like you're whistling in a burning building, and you're pretending like nothing's going wrong. And this is unreasonable. And the people don't know. I doubt that many of my listeners know that our national debt is now $37 trillion. This can't go on. Now, these auctions, as I said, they're crucial because they fund the government's spending. Disruptions there at the auctions can lead to spikes in borrowing costs and increased economic uncertainty. And historically, we can look back to the Great Depression for lessons about this. That catastrophic economic failure was in part fueled by debt mismanagement. It was also, there's a couple of things involved. In 1929, when people think that the Depression hit, it really wasn't a depression at that point. It was a severe recession. It didn't become a depression, and it did become a depression and a Great Depression until 1931, when England went off of the gold standard. You had Winston Churchill, who was the chancellor. I'm just touching on this lightly, but this is important to understand because people don't understand it. Winston Churchill was Chancellor of the Exchequer. He wanted to be the golden chancellor. And he got the United States to buy into manipulating the dollar vis-a-vis gold so that England could stay on the gold standard. But in 1931, they just couldn't do it anymore. And somebody said famously at the time, it's the end of the world. And it was, because all spending in the entire world, it was done on bills of credit backed by pound sterling. And that's how borrowing got done. That's how finances got done in the world. And there was nothing to replace it. And so when this person said it's the end of the world as we know it, he was right. But the policy responses were poor, as I explained. Debt mismanagement, it was poor mismanagement of the dollar. And the parallels today are unsettling, especially if we continue to down this path of austerity that stifles growth while the debt continues to climb. Another looming threat, which I just kind of touched on, but I'm kind of energized by this stuff, and I'm touching on stuff before my notes tell me to touch on it, so excuse me there. But another looming threat is the potential erosion of the United States dollar status as the world's primarily reserve currency. There's economic war that has been waged for a long time against the dollar, and honestly, there's no reserve currency like the dollar. There isn't. There just isn't. Nobody, in order to be reserve currency, which the United States Federal Reserve System is, you've got to be able to handle, if somebody comes to you, if a country comes to you and says, look, I need cash, you've got to be able to handle it. And it's not uncommon. It's not at all uncommon to be able to have to be liquid to the amount of $1 trillion per day. $1 trillion per day. And an emergency, $5 or $6 or $7 trillion a day. And this is one of the reasons why the dollar has had global dominance. This has afforded the United States significant economic and geopolitical advantages. I'm sorry, guys, it's all about money. Sustained fiscal irresponsibility, like we're seeing. All what Trump is doing, and you needn't look beyond the mark to try to obtain insights as to why this is going on. It's a giveaway. It's a cash giveaway. It's the finance oligarch class, the criminals who run Wall Street, who want the huge pots of money that are in the United States Treasury and that are granted to the United States programs by Congress. They want it. They want more for you. That's why I played the George Carlin clip. They want more for themselves, and they want less or nothing for you. And it's just as simple as that. It's glossed over with a veneer of civilization, of collegiality, but when you get right down to it, it's not that. That is all a smokescreen for people who don't listen to Politics by Jake and who don't have the understanding that I provide to them Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m., cheap plug, Politics by Jake. Listen and learn. But you always have these attacks, and you have this sustained fiscal irresponsibility. You have this rising debt that is not being addressed, and geopolitical tensions risk undermining the status. And that is why, for the second time in this show, I'm saying that had Biden stayed in, and this is why they wanted him out, because he asked for them to pay their fair share, and they didn't want to. And that was all it took for them to say, to go to Nancy Pelosi and to go to Barack Obama and say, this guy's got to go. He's got to go. Because what did he want? He wanted to address these $37 trillion in deficits and the way he was going to do it, and he had a plan. And the plan was, I believe over 10 years, was to have a 25% alternative minimum tax on corporations, 28% top rate, which is not bad. 90% was the top rate in the 50s. Corporations got along, really okay with that, and a 28% capital gains tax. This drove the bankers and the other financial oligarchs and hedge fund hyenas that just drove them wild. And they said, get rid of this guy. And that's why you have the situation that you have now with the big, beautiful bill. It is the reaction and the antithesis to what Biden wanted to do. If the dollar loses its reserve currency position, the consequences could be severe. It would be incredibly severe. Higher borrowing costs, diminished economic influence, increased vulnerability to global financial shocks. And this doesn't, it's not a theoretical concern. It's a reality. It demands attention. Policymakers must take urgent steps to stabilize the debt, promote sustainable growth, and you won't get that out of Trump. He'll just continue to go on, and those who hold his coat and those who follow him, the little Marco Rubios and the Carolyn Levitts and the Pam Blondies who sit there in the cabinet meetings, which are televised, and a requirement of the cabinet secretaries, and this is just the most disgusting thing that you can imagine. The requirement is that they each have to go around and they have to say good things about Trump while he sits there on his fat ass and listens to it. This is just the most disgusting thing. It's a capitulation of political decency and care for one's fellow man, and it's the fealty. Some people wear a gold pin. They used to wear a flag of the United States pin on their lapel, which was bad enough. Let's have somebody wear a Constitution pin on their lapel. But it was bad enough for the flag. At least the flag represents the Constitution. But in this particular situation, they are wearing gold pins of Donald Trump. It's a complete and embarrassing capitulation. It's entirely the same as the Nazis and the cult worship of Adolf Hitler. And like I said, it's not a distant theoretical concern. $37 trillion. $37 trillion. All I can say is, of all that I've said, is that as citizens and stakeholders in this economy, we need to stay informed, demand accountability, push for policies, prioritize long-term economic health over short-term political gains, because the economic future of our nation, stability of the global financial system, so someday some other person doesn't get up and say it's the end of the world. It all depends on it. And this is Politics by Jake.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting.
Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable.
And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake.
Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise. And this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. And thank you, Twain Consulting. You can go visit Twain Consulting at facebook.com/Twain Consulting and look at all of their great products there. Now, let's talk about the human cost a bit of these cuts to Medicaid and Medicare and Obamacare, which is, of course, the Affordable Care Act. Healthcare is the lifeblood of any society, and right now we face devastating cuts that threaten to unravel the progress made over decades. The proposed slashing of Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare programs, it's not just a political issue. It's literally a matter of life and death of Americans. Studies estimate that these cuts could lead to between 51,000 and 224,000 excess deaths every year. And these are lives lost, not due to natural causes, but directly because people will be denied access to the care that they need. This could be a mother unable to afford cancer treatment. It could be a child missing vital vaccinations. It could be seniors losing access to life-sustaining medication. Medicaid expansion in many states has been credited with saving tens of thousands of lives by providing health care coverage to millions who previously had none. Rolling back these expansions threatens to reverse those gains, and it pushes vulnerable populations back into a cycle of poor health and preventable tragedy. It's not just about insurance cards. It's about the barriers that make healthcare inaccessible. Complicated bureaucracy, lack of affordable providers, programs that are hard to navigate. These barriers disproportionately affect lower-income families and communities of color, deepening existing inequalities. And the bottom line is clear on this. Cutting these programs jeopardizes the health of millions. It puts our entire public health system at risk. We must stand up and demand that our leaders protect expanded access to health care, not just to dismantle it. Because when health care fails, society fails. Now from there, let's talk about, and these are, all the bullet points that I have, things I wanted to talk about, the human and economic costs of the rampant immigration enforcement. Today we face an alarming escalation in immigration enforcement. It's driven by a massive increase in funding for secret police, which, let's face it, folks, they're Gestapo. So the Gestapo, the secret police, and deportation operations. The government has allocated an unprecedented budget to intensify surveillance, detentions, and deportations, an approach that raises serious ethical and practical concerns. And what's truly shocking is that these deportation efforts are not limited to undocumented immigrants alone. They increasingly target millions of people, including United States citizens, who find themselves caught in the crossfire due to mistaken identity, flawed records, or bureaucratic overreach, which is one of the reasons why I say, folks, they're building concentration camps. Do you understand? They're building concentration camps. They are redoing what the Gestapo did, in the Sturmabteilung did, in the days of Adolf Hitler. They're absolutely doing it. And let me tell you another thing. If you think these camps are just for illegal aliens, or you think these camps are just for Hispanics or Latinos, if you think these camps are just for Palestinian Americans, if you think these camps are just for Asian Americans, which would be, of course, this would be outrageous enough. Guess again. Guess again. So, moving on, beyond the human toll, families are torn apart, communities are destabilized, profound economic costs. There's mass deportations that disrupt local economies. It removes essential workers, like the stupidity of going and taking the farm workers out, doing jobs that Americans don't want and cannot do as effectively. It undermines businesses. It undermines the delivery of the food that we eat. And it's wrong-headed, it's misguided, and it's just plain stupid, and it's dangerous. You have dangerous people. You have idiots. You have morons. You have ideologues who have no sense running the government, and it undermines businesses that rely on immigrant labor, like I said, like farms. Experts warn that relentless pursuit of deportations harms industries ranging from agriculture to construction, for sure, jeopardizing economic recovery and growth. The aggressive enforcement approach, it fuels fear, it fuels mistrust. And, look, these guys wear masks because they know they're hated, and they know they're not liked, and they know they're subject to assault, vigilante or ad hoc assault, because they're afraid. So they're doing these things for a paycheck. A lot of them even aren't legal. They're like just guys in cars who are going and trying to do things. It's discouraging immigrant communities, however, from seeking essential services or cooperating with law enforcement. This ultimately is going to compromise public safety for everyone. And I'm telling you, what goes around comes around. And you need to be aware of that's happening too. And as a consequence of this, we have to question these policies and their massive price, not only in dollars, but in human dignity, social cohesion, what we need instead. And I've seen people argue that we have laws, it's not right to break the laws. I'll tell you what laws we have. I'll tell you what laws are being broken. We don't have an illegal immigration problem. We have an illegal employer problem. And if the feds would shut down these operations that are allowing these people to come in and work these jobs, without the benefits being paid to them, or without them being in the country properly, say for the sake of the argument that they're in the country improperly, they wouldn't come because there wouldn't be any jobs. It's the employers who allow these things to go on because they obtain an economic benefit from the nearly slave labor practices that they employ with these people who come over the border. And, they just come over because of what you and I want. They come over because of what everybody wants. They want the economic benefits of the United States, and they're willing to do these miserable, rotten jobs that you can't get Americans to do in order to get those blessings and benefits. They're humble. These are the kinds of people that we should have as citizens. So these things being the case, as I said, we have to question these policies. The human dignity that's compromised, the social cohesion that's compromised. We need immigration reform like Senator Langford's bill, which Trump ordered the people in Congress who were enthralled to him shot down. They pulled the rug out from under Langford, that's for sure. We need immigration reform grounded in fairness, compassion, and most of all, economic sense. We have to, therefore, stand up against these draconian measures and advocate for policies that recognize the value and humanity of all people living in our communities. Now, I want to address something else. I want to address the end of USAID and its far-reaching consequences. On July 1st, 2025, the United States officially terminated its USAID program. It's been a cornerstone of our global humanitarian and development efforts for decades. For decades. And please pay attention. This is not just the end of a program. It is a significant retreat from America's commitment to international leadership and global health. USAID has been instrumental in saving millions of lives worldwide, particularly through programs like PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which dramatically reduced HIV and AIDS infections, deaths across Africa, and other vulnerable regions. The impact of USAID extends far beyond health, as supporting education, supporting economic development, disaster relief, fostering stability in some of the world's most fragile nations. By ending this program, the United States is essentially ceding ground to geopolitical rivals like Russia and China. These are countries who are aggressively expanding their influence through aid, investment, and strategic partnership. And it's a dangerous thing. Mainland China is doing what's called the Belt and Road, where they come into a country and they say, we'll build infrastructure for you. We'll build bridges here. We'll build other things. But what they demand also in return is they demand political influence and de facto ownership and control of the politics in that country. And by USAID abdicating and leaving the field, this threatens America's ability to shape global affairs and protect its national interests. Say what you want about this. This is part of nation building. The America First policy, the misguided America First policy that's driving, because it's a canard, because it's false, because it's phony. It's a couple of populists, false populists, who are turning everybody against everybody else, and it sounds patriotic, but in reality it isolates the United States, it diminishes our global standing, and this isolation breeds uncertainty. It opens the door for adversaries to fill the vacuum left behind. This is crucial to understand. Supporting programs like USAID is not about charity or aid alone. It's a matter of smart diplomacy, because by helping other nations achieve stability and prosperity, we create allies, we reduce conflicts, we promote global security. So, the consequences of abandoning USAID, this is going to ripple across continents and ultimately back to our own shores. And we must call upon our leaders to reverse this short-sighted policy and recommit to international engagement. America's strength has always been linked to its leadership in the world. That's nation building. We need to make sure that legacy continues. And this is Politics by Jake.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting.
Hi, I'm Jake with Twain Consulting. And if you're a business owner, freelancer, or entrepreneur, protecting what you've worked so hard to build starts with solid agreement. Imagine having agreements that make misunderstandings disappear and costly disputes a thing of the past. Get It in Writing is the all-in-one legal form package designed just for people like you, savvy entrepreneurs who want clear, enforceable contracts, whether you're hiring trusted contractors, leasing space, or closing deals that move your business forward. Get It in Writing provides easy-to-use, professionally drafted forms that save you time, money, and stress. Right now, you can get full access for just $99. That's 80% off the regular $497 price. A limited time opportunity you don't want to miss. Picture the peace of mind you'll have, knowing that your business is fully protected so you can confidently focus on growth and success. Don't wait until the unexpected happens. Take control. Secure your business today with Get It in Writing. Call us now at 213-465-0639 or visit facebook.com/Twain Consulting to get started.
And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake.
Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. And this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. Now, let's just do a quick overview of Ukraine, shall we? And, this changes so much. Once again, though, Hegseth and other appeasers want to freeze. They want to put a freeze on the weapons that they're giving to Ukraine. The Ukraine government has called in, the foreign ministry has been called in, the U.S. charge d'affaires, that there should be not be a delay. Why not? Because this Russian summer offensive that's been going on since like April, it seems to have really gone nowhere. But it could materialize at just about any point. The U.S. excuse is that U.S. ammunition stockpiles are too low. Well, I mean, that's mismanagement right there. I mean, you've been there for 6 months. Why don't you order some new ammunition, some new Patriot missile systems? This is now. The certain urgency of this is in mid-September, the Russian Federation is organizing its maneuver, which is called Zapad 25. In other words, West. Zapad means West. The last time they did this, with the Zapad maneuver, it was 2021. And this was the deployment of Russian forces into Belarus and Western Russia that were then used to attack Ukraine in February of the following year of 2022. So, as usual, as I've stressed in other contexts, in military affairs, often the drill, the exercise is used as a cover for real military deployments that at a certain point go live. They flip the switch, and all of a sudden they're live, and everything is in place and ready to go. And then they would do that. And it is thought that the area between Belarus, where the Russians would undoubtedly be, and the enclave of Kaliningrad, Königsberg, on the Baltic, is a very narrow corridor. And this is called the Suwalki Corridor. And this is where the attack might occur. It also involves crossing the territory of Lithuania. It would cut off the land route from the main, Poland, and the rest of NATO into the Baltic states. So what we need now are Patriot missiles, 155 millimeter shells, Hellfire missiles, GMLRS, Stinger, anti-aircraft missiles, AIM missiles, grenade launchers, and so forth. There's a constant need of these. And we're now at a level where Ukraine uses about 150 drones a day. This is one of the reasons why the Russians cannot advance. They haven't succeeded. It's because of this. And the Ukrainians claim to produce 2 million drones per year, as of now. But there's a danger just about any time of a quick Soviet attack, a coup de main against Narva in Estonia, for example, all the way at the extreme northwestern flank of NATO. Interesting things. One of the big threats by the Russians is to attack the city of Pokrovsk, Pokrovsk, approximately. That is the area of the Russian 8th Army. And the Ukrainians have just completely destroyed that headquarters, by the way. A lot of those generals and staff officers are no more. They have assumed room temperature. So, this is important. There's a U.S. media boycott, clearly. The U.S. media have decided to placate Trump. We've talked about this, how they had these meetings back in 2024 before the election even occurred. Trump is obviously what if Trump wins, Trump is obviously anti-Ukraine. He's obviously pro-Russian. This is putting it mildly. That I think by now, he's incorrigible. That's stating it more the way it actually is. Although it could change. But you're just saying there's a great deal of unpredictability. He hasn't lifted a finger. The Russians, the past couple of weeks, in one night, they were able to fire 550 drones and missiles total into different parts of Ukraine. And it's too bad for them, I guess, that they still haven't grasped, which you would think they would, wouldn't you? Because it was done to them by the Nazis in World War II, that attacking civilian targets with that kind of firepower, it gets you nowhere. I mean, really, you can kill 10 or 20 people. The Ukrainians, they now have the habit of going into the shelters, but the Russians keep doing this. It seems to be a kind of a tropism, a kind of a reflex, kind of a knee-jerk thing that they have. And we've got all kinds of interesting Ukrainian attacks. The Ukrainians have attacked a Russian military train, destroyed the locomotives, destroyed the tracks. That happened in Zaporizhia. The Ukrainians have been hoping for 20,000 anti-drone missiles that had been promised by Trump. Trump has now said he's assigned them to the Israelis. Nevertheless, the tactic of the Ukrainians to attack deep into Russia, say in the area of Volgograd, Stalingrad, on the Volga, they've been able to do that and to destroy two quite expensive Sukhoi 34 bombers that were there. So the Ukrainians need to worry about a late summer offensive now by the Russians. European aid is coming, but it's coming too slow. The estimate now for the first half of 2025 is that Russian losses collectively are 230,000 troops killed. I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding. 230,000 troops killed, wounded, missing, captured, dispersed, unaccounted for. 230,000 troops and 1,300 tanks lost. And according to a professor, his name is Kuyip, of the Swiss Technical Institute, the Russians are capable of manufacturing one tank per day. So 365 tanks per year, if that holds up, right? But instead, the Russians are losing 4 tanks a day at the current level. And that means they have depleted most of the historic stocks of tanks going all the way back to the 1940s, going all the way back to the T-34s. Yes, the T-34s, the World War II main battle tank. And most of that now is depleted. So the Russians would need to stop the war. If the Russians stop the war, though, the Russians could rebuild a force of 3,000 tanks. It would take about 7 years. Now, Trump had promised Zelensky that at the meeting of the G7, that according to Trump, he was going to provide some Patriot missile batteries for the air defense. That was the main thing that Zelensky asked about. But now he has, of course, reneged on that, and that's Trump. Welcher, he's a welcher. He welched on his promise. And there are some wags who propose that he keeps going like this. Trump could be declared the patron saint of Russia. That could happen. Trump could be the savior of Russia, or at least of the Putin regime. He could be, for example, canonized as St. Don of Jamaica Estates. Sorry, this is funny. But otherwise, this is a moment of great shame for the United States. So, to sum up, the Russian axes have advanced. Pokrovsk, I mentioned this, but to sum up, Pokrovsk is one. Kharkiv in the northeast of Ukraine, that's another one where the Russians are attacking. Sumy, a little bit south of that. Sumy is sort of opposite of Kursk. And we mentioned Zaporizhia. The fighting goes on. But there is no generalized Russian advance. It's just an extremely slow process with astronomical losses. And because of the diffidence of Donald Trump, that I just mentioned about how he could be canonized as the saint of Jamaica Estates. The Coalition of the Willing, of course, came together in Europe. It's about 30 countries, minus the United States. All I can say is what a humiliation. America, make America great again by making yourself into a laughing stock for cowardice. Well, all right, we're about out of time. Getting back to this austerity bill, this isn't just about health care cuts. It's about an entire austerity bill that threatens to dismantle the social safety net for millions of Americans, from slashing Medicaid and Medicare to funding mass deportations and concentration camps. That's right, concentration camps. This bill embodies cruelty disguised as fiscal responsibility, and the consequences are devastating. Widespread job losses, lost health care coverage, increased poverty, thousands of preventable deaths each year. This bill is nothing short of a national disaster in the making. But listen, there is hope. We have the power to stop this. The critical moment is before the 2026 elections, when we can hold these lawmakers accountable and vote them out. A lot of these things don't go into effect until 2027. If we could flip the House, if we could flip the Senate, increasingly more likely, we could get a majority that would override any veto, and we could repeal the big, beautiful bill. So I urge you to call your representatives right now, make your voice heard. Just consider that you are now on notice. You are marching until 2026, until November of 2026, and demand wherever you can that they reject this brutal austerity bill in all its forms so that we can protect our communities, defend our rights, which are absolutely, positively under attack. And I haven't even talked about a lot of the things that are going on right now. We'll have to do that on the Monday show. Ensure a future where dignity and compassion prevail over the greed and indifference of the finance oligarchs. This fight is urgent. The stakes are too high to ignore. Stand up, speak out, vote them out. And this is Politics by Jake.